Take a moment and pause for a second. Ask yourself a simple question. What would it feel like if your mornings didn't start with the loud sound of an alarm, but instead began on your own terms? No rushing out of bed. No pressure right from the start of the day. A morning that begins with calm, not urgency. A life where your time isn't controlled by someone else, but guided by your own decisions. Sounds good, right? But this is exactly where most people make a big mistake. They treat this kind of life as just a dream. They believe it's only possible for a select few, people who already have money, resources, or some kind of advantage. And that belief stops them before they even begin. The truth is, financial freedom isn't something that happens overnight. It's not a lottery. It's not a shortcut. And it's definitely not instant success. But that doesn't mean it's out of reach. The real problem isn't where most people think it is. Most people assume their biggest challenges are low income, limited resources, or a lack of opportunities. But if you look closely, you'll realize the real issue lies somewhere else. And this is the exact point where almost 90% of people miss out. They focus on earning money, but not on understanding money. They work hard, but without clear direction. They talk about saving, but without any structured system. And slowly, they get stuck in a cycle where work keeps increasing, but freedom stays just as far away. The biggest mistake isn't that people don't work hard. It's that they're not working on the right things. And when the direction isn't clear, the results become random. You've probably seen people like this, working for years, earning a decent income, yet still dealing with the same stress at the end of every month. Why? Because they don't have a system. And without a system, no matter how much money you make, it doesn't stay, it doesn't grow, and eventually your lifestyle starts controlling you. That's why some people slowly move ahead even with average income, while others, despite earning more, stay stuck in the same place. The difference isn't just in how much they earn, it's in how they approach it. And within that approach, there's a subtle but powerful gap, one that most people never even notice. And until that gap is understood, no matter how much you earn, financial freedom remains just an idea. So now the real question is, can you actually break out of the cycle? Is there a practical system that can gradually take you to a point where money doesn't control your life, but you control it? That's what we're about to understand, because this shift slowly changes the direction of your entire life. Now try to feel this change a little more closely. Imagine waking up in the morning and not needing to check the time right away. Your day doesn't start with a fixed schedule. It starts with your priorities. You decide what to do, how much to work, and when to rest. Work doesn't disappear, but its meaning changes. You're no longer working just for money. You're working on things that actually matter to you. And that shift is powerful, because when work moves from obligation to choice, your entire mindset transforms. You don't wait for a paycheck at the end of the month, because you've built sources that continue to generate income over time. Maybe it's not huge in the beginning, but slowly, that consistency builds a strong foundation, and that foundation gives you confidence, the kind where decisions are no longer driven by fear, but by clarity. Now imagine this. You don't need permission to take time off. If you want to go somewhere, you simply make a plan and leave, because your time isn't tied to an external system anymore. But here's something very important to understand. None of this happens overnight. It doesn't come from a single decision. It's the result of small, consistent steps. Steps that may not even feel noticeable in the beginning. And this is where most people get confused. They think that if results aren't visible immediately, they must be on the wrong path. But reality is the opposite. In the beginning, progress is slow, sometimes even invisible. But beneath the surface, a structure is being built, one that eventually creates a massive impact. That's why some people stay patient, while others quit halfway through. The difference isn't just consistency, it's understanding. If you know what you're doing and why you're doing it, even slow progress feels meaningful. But without clarity, even fast progress feels random. And this is where the most subtle yet powerful shift happens. You begin to move away from a mindset that judges everything based on immediate results. And in its place, a new perspective develops. one where you start thinking long term and making decisions accordingly. That perspective is what ultimately shapes your financial reality. And once that clarity sets in, things don't feel the same anymore. Because now you're not just working, you're moving forward with understanding. But this is where the reality starts to shift in a different direction. Because the clarity and control we've been talking about rarely show up in most people's real lives. If you look around carefully, you'll notice a very different pattern. The alarm goes off in the morning. You rush to get up, get ready, and then spend the entire day chasing a fixed routine. Most of your day goes into work you have to do, not the work you actually want to do. And this isn't just one day. It repeats every single day, Monday through Friday, and often Saturday too. Then Sunday comes. A little rest, a little distraction, and then the same routine starts all over again. Over time, this pattern feels so normal that people stop questioning it altogether. It starts to feel like, this is just life, this is how it is. And then something else gets added to the equation. Expenses. Every month, your salary comes in, and right along with it, the spending begins. Rent or EMIs, bills, daily expenses, and a few small desires. At first, everything feels manageable, but slowly, this pattern creates a dependency. Your entire life starts revolving around that monthly income. If the income comes in, everything feels stable. If it stops for any reason, the entire system shakes. And that's where the real pressure begins. Because now, work is no longer just work. It becomes survival. And when work becomes survival, choice disappears. You're no longer doing what you want to do. You're doing what you have to do. And that's the point where freedom slowly starts fading away. From the outside, everything looks fine. You have a job, an income, a functioning life. But internally, there's a constant tension. What if something unexpected happens? What if my income stops? What if my expenses increase? These questions slowly turn into stress. So people look for solutions, working more, taking extra shifts, or finding a better paying job. But there's a subtle problem here. With this approach, income may increase, but dependency increases along with it, which means the more you earn, the more you depend on earning. And that's the trap, because on the surface, it looks like growth, but the structure stays the same. You're still trading time for money. And until that equation changes, nothing really changes. That's why some people work hard for years and still stay in the same place. Their income grows, but their freedom doesn't. Their lifestyle improves, but their control doesn't. And eventually a point comes where people start asking themselves, is this really how it's going to be? It may sound like a small question, but it carries a deep realization. Because for the first time, you're noticing the pattern you've been stuck in for so long. And once you start seeing that pattern, another truth begins to emerge. The problem isn't a lack of effort. It's a lack of direction. And the moment you understand that, something else becomes clear. Most people aren't on the wrong path. They're just not focusing on the right things. And that's where the biggest mistakes happen. First mistake. People treat income as everything. They believe that as long as money is coming in, everything is fine. But they don't look at where that money is going or what it's actually building. If money comes in every month and disappears just as easily, that's not growth. That's just flow. Money coming in and going out. Second mistake. People put all their energy into earning, but not into building a system. They work more, give more time, but rarely ask themselves, is this sustainable in the long run? If your income depends entirely on your time, then no matter how far you go, you'll eventually hit a limit because time is limited. Third mistake. People think saving is the solution. They believe that cutting expenses will fix everything over time. Saving is important, but saving alone doesn't create freedom because if money is just sitting there and not growing, it won't take you forward. And the fourth most subtle mistake. People expect quick results. They start something, but if they don't see big changes in a few months, they assume it's not working. And that's where they stop. The real issue isn't in these steps. It's in the approach. People think in pieces, when they should be thinking in systems. They see earning, saving, and investing as separate things, when in reality, they work together. And when that connection is missing, effort doesn't translate into results. That's why so many people keep trying for years, but never find clarity, because they're working on the symptoms, not the root cause. And here's something important to understand. These mistakes don't mean people are incapable or that they lack ability. It simply means they haven't been given the right framework. And when the framework isn't clear, every decision becomes guesswork. Sometimes things work, sometimes they don't, but there's no consistency. And without consistency, no long-term result can truly last. This is the point where things can start to change, because once the mistake becomes clear, fixing it becomes possible. And the moment your approach changes, your entire direction begins to shift with it. This is where a new possibility begins to open up. But to understand it, one thing needs to be clear. This isn't a path where you make one decision and everything suddenly changes. This is a process. And like any process, it takes time, understanding, and consistency. But that doesn't mean it's difficult. It means it's structured. And that's the difference. Most people try things randomly and then conclude that this doesn't work. But when the same actions are done within a clear system, the results slowly start becoming predictable. Now think about something simple. If you want to reach a destination, you need two things. First, you need to know where you're going. Second, you need to know how to get there. If either one is missing, you'll either wander or keep ending up back where you started. Financial freedom works the same way. It's not a random achievement. It's a defined outcome, one that's reached step by following the right process. But here's a common misconception. People think they need to do something completely different or take huge risks, when in reality, most things stay the same. Only the way you use them changes. You still earn, but you use your income differently. You still spend, but with awareness. And most importantly, you don't leave your money idle anymore. You give it direction. And that direction is what slowly creates the difference. At first, that difference is small, so small that you might not even notice it. But over time, those small changes begin to compound. And at a certain point, you can clearly see that things are changing. There's another important thing to understand here. There's no magic in this process, no shortcuts, but there is clarity. And when there's clarity, confusion starts to fade. When confusion fades, your decisions improve. And those better decisions, over time, build a strong financial foundation. Now, the question is no longer, is this possible? The question becomes, how do I apply this the right way? And that's where the journey becomes practical, because now your focus shifts from imagination to execution. And when execution is clear, progress, even if slow, becomes stable. And that stability eventually turns into freedom. This is where things stop being theoretical and start becoming real. And as things start becoming real, your belief begins to grow as well. Because until you see something in practice, it just feels like an idea. But the moment you see that someone has actually walked this path, your perspective begins to shift. And here's something important to understand. Every successful journey looks simple from the outside, but on the inside, it's the result of many small steps. No one moves forward overnight. The beginning is always small and often uncomfortable. Let's understand this with an example. There was a person who didn't start with a lot of money, nor did they have any special advantage. Their situation was similar to what many people face today. They had a job, a limited income, and gradually increasing expenses. At one point, they were left with very little money, and in that moment, they realized something. If they didn't change their approach, the coming years would look exactly the same. That's where they made a small shift. They started understanding that money isn't just something you earn. It's something you need to manage and grow. In the beginning, they took simple steps. They started tracking their expenses, cutting down unnecessary spending, and setting aside small amounts of money. These weren't big changes, but they were consistent. At the same time, they worked on increasing their earning ability. They began learning new skills, trying small side projects, and gradually building additional income streams. In the beginning, the results were small. Sometimes they earned a little extra, sometimes nothing at all, but they didn't quit the process. And that made all the difference. After some time, they realized that saving alone wasn't enough. If money isn't growing, its value slowly decreases. That's when they started learning about investing. They began with small amounts, avoiding unnecessary risks, and stay consistent. And this is where an important shift happened. Earlier, they were only trading time for money, but now their money had started working for them. At first, it was small, but over time, it began to grow. And as it grew, their dependence on a single job started to decrease. This change didn't happen overnight. It took time, it took patience, and there were moments of doubt. But because their approach was clear, their direction didn't change. Gradually, their situation became more stable. Income was no longer coming from just one source. Expenses were under control, and most importantly, decisions were no longer driven by pressure, but by planning. And that planning eventually becomes a foundation of freedom. This story isn't about just one person. It's a pattern. When the approach is structured, results come slowly but consistently. And once your approach becomes structured, things start becoming clear. What to actually do. This is where the real system begins. It's not complicated, but it does need to be understood in the right sequence. Because if the sequence is off, you can put in all the effort and still see no results. This system can be broken down into 3 parts: earning, saving, direction, putting your money to work. And all 3 are connected. Let's start with earning. Most people treat earning as something fixed. They believe whatever salary they're getting is all they have to work with. But earning isn't static. It's dynamic, which means you can grow it over time. How? By improving your skills, exploring new opportunities, and increasing your value. Because as your value increases, your earning naturally increases with it. It's not instant, but it is controllable. Now let's talk about the second part. Saving. Saving doesn't just mean putting money aside. It means taking control of your money. How much you earn is important, but how much you retain is even more important. If your income is increasing, but your expenses are increasing at the same pace, your net result is still 0. That's why saving begins with awareness. Where is your money going? What are you spending it on? Is it necessary? This clarity is what slowly turns into real saving. Now comes the third and most critical part, direction. This is where the biggest difference happens. If your money is just sitting there after saving, it's not working. And money that doesn't work doesn't grow. So giving your money direction is essential. Direction means putting your money into places where it can grow over time. This isn't about taking reckless risks. It's about making informed decisions. Even small amounts are enough, as long as you're consistent. Now look at all 3 together. If earning increases, but there's no saving, no benefit. If saving exists, but there's no direction, no growth. If there's direction, but earning isn't stable, no scale. That's why all 3 must work as a system. And when this system runs properly, it starts building a foundation. At first, that foundation is small. But as your earning grows, your saving improves, and your direction becomes clearer. That foundation gets stronger. And over time, that foundation becomes the base of your financial stability and eventually your freedom. There are no shortcuts here, but there is clarity. And every small step taken with clarity creates a massive difference in the long run. Now, as you begin to understand the system, another truth starts to emerge. This is where most people make mistakes again. Even after understanding the system, they fail to apply it correctly. So it's important to clearly see the mistakes that 90% of people keep repeating. First mistake, lifestyle inflation. The moment income increases, people immediately increase their expenses. A better phone, a more expensive lifestyle, unnecessary upgrades. From the outside, it looks like growth, but internally it's a trap, because as income grows, expenses grow just as fast. And the result? No real progress. Second mistake, treating saving as the end goal. People think, if I just keep saving, everything will work out. But if money is only being saved and not growing, it's slowly losing value. Inflation reduces your purchasing power every year, which means money that feels strong today won't be as powerful in the future. So yes, saving is important, but saving alone is not enough. Third mistake, fear of investing or blind investing. Some people avoid investing completely. They think it's too risky. On the other hand, some people jump into investing without understanding it, following advice blindly, or chasing quick profits. Both approaches are wrong. Investing isn't gambling, and it's not blind trust either. It's a skill, one that needs to be learned gradually. Fourth mistake, lack of consistency. In the beginning, people feel motivated. They stay disciplined for a few months, then slowly lose focus, and the system breaks. This is the most silent mistake, because financial growth doesn't come from one-time effort. It comes from repeated actions. Now, if you look at all these mistakes together, a pattern becomes clear. People know the steps, but they miss the sequence and discipline. And when the sequence breaks, the results break too. So what's the solution? It's not a complicated strategy. It's a simple correction. When income increases, strengthen your system, not your lifestyle. Save money, but don't leave it idle. Invest with understanding, step by step. Stay consistent, even if progress feels slow. This is where the system deepens. You're no longer just following steps. You're executing with understanding. And that understanding slowly turns into confidence. Now your decisions aren't random. They're calculated. Now money isn't just coming and going. It's starting to work for you. And as this process stabilizes, one more thing begins to change. Your mindset. This is the point where the real difference is made, because the system shows you the path, but your mindset gives you the strength to stay on it. Your thinking starts to shift. Earlier, your focus was only on how much you're earning. Now it begins to shift toward how well you're managing and growing it. And this is not a small change. This is where you move away from short-term decisions and start thinking long-term. Now, another clear difference begins to appear. Some people look rich, but are financially stressed inside. Others live a simple life on the outside, but are financially strong within. What's the difference? It's mindset. The first group spends money to show status. The second group invests money to build freedom. The first focuses on immediate satisfaction. The second understands delayed gratification. And over time, this difference becomes massive. Your decisions start changing too. Where earlier your purchases were driven by emotion, now they're guided by awareness. You start asking yourself, do I really need this? Is this improving my future? Or is this just a temporary desire? These questions don't stop you. They guide you. Another shift happens around risk. Earlier, risk meant fear. What if I lose money? What if I make the wrong decision? But now your perspective changes. You begin to understand that the biggest risk is doing nothing, because if nothing changes, the same pattern continues, and the same results repeat. You start developing patience. You no longer judge everything based on immediate results. You learn to trust the process, because you understand that consistent actions create long-term results. And most importantly, you start feeling in control. Earlier, money controlled your decisions. Now you begin to direct your money. This control doesn't come instantly, but it builds gradually. And as it grows, your confidence grows with it. You stop comparing yourself to others. What others are doing, how much they're earning, what level they're at, none of that matters anymore. Your focus becomes clear. You're on your own journey. And this mindset is what sustains the entire system. Because without the right mindset, even the best system won't last. But when your mindset and system align, progress doesn't just become possible, it becomes stable. And that stability creates a clear direction where your actions are no longer random, but driven by purpose. And when actions are driven by purpose, things begin to fall into place. Now the question is no longer, what should I do? How do I do this consistently? This is where the practical journey begins. And the beginning doesn't need to be complicated. The simpler it is, the more sustainable it becomes. Step 1. Start understanding your money. Where's it going every month? What are you spending on? Is it necessary? This may sound basic, but this is where control begins. Step 2. Build a small but consistent saving habit. The amount doesn't have to be big. What matters is consistency, because consistency is more powerful than size. Step 3. Don't leave your money idle. Start learning about investing. Slowly. Start small, but with understanding. No rush. No unnecessary risk. Step 4. Keep improving your earning ability. Learn new skills. Improve your current work. And gradually explore new income streams. Because without growing your earning, your system cannot scale. Now, something important, doing these steps once won't change anything. This is a habit, one that builds over time. And the more you repeat it, the more natural it becomes. In the beginning, the changes may feel small. Sometimes it will feel like progress is slow. Sometimes like nothing is happening at all. And this is exactly where most people stop. But if you stay consistent here, things start to shift. Remember, financial freedom is not an event. It's a process. And in that process, what matters most is clarity, consistency, and patience. You don't need a big start. You just need the right start. And that start can happen today. Because in the end, the difference isn't made by how much you think. It's made by what you actually begin. And when you begin in the right direction, that direction slowly starts changing your entire life. And if something here gave you even a little clarity, or helped you see your situation differently, don't keep it to yourself, because someone around you might be going through the same phase right now and may just need the right perspective. If you enjoy clear, practical insights like this, you can stay connected with this channel and drop a comment below. I'm starting, because sometimes a small commitment becomes the biggest beginning.